guys, so excited you're here. It is a couple minutes late. No big deal. We're going to do our Little Lady's Bible story. I'm going to wait for a couple of folks to get on. When you are here, say hello so I know you're there, and that way I can say hi to you with your name. Okay. I see a couple people on. I love doing this. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as we enjoy reading it to you. Okay. Cool. Let's get started. Look at my crazy hair today. So, hey Natasha. We're going to do this. I'm going to explain it to you real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and read our Little Lady's Bible story, and then I'm going to end this live, and then we're actually going to do a second live, and we're going to be doing an adult's insight, Christ in the Old Testament. So this one is for the little ladies, then I'm going to end the live, and then I'm going to start a new live. And I know that sounds confusing, but I'm being strategic in that, so stick with me, okay? So let's go ahead and read. My husband is pulling back the curtains, so I have bomb lighting. Tell me that's not pretty great. Okay, let's read our Bible story. Today, we are going to read The Promise in the Weeds. And I'm sure you guys can take a wild guess who that's about. The Promise in the Weeds. Joseph lived in Egypt with his family for many more years and became a very old man. After the time he died, the Pharaoh he had served under also died. A long, long time passed, and the new king, the new Pharaoh, did not have an open heart toward God like the old one. The new Pharaoh saw himself as the only king and thought God's people were a threat because they viewed God as their king. Pharaoh wondered what would happen if they all decided to get together and try to kill him, so one of them could be king. Then he had an idea. A very bad, horrible idea. But he was king, so he could make this horrible idea as the rules. Pharaoh made God's people slaves. He put them to work, really hard work, and he made the work even harder than it had to be. But the people kept having babies, and Pharaoh worried that one day they would grow to be more powerful than he was. His selfish heart was hard toward God, so he came up with an even more horrible rule. You see, when God's people had babies, there were special women who helped those babies be born. Well, Pharaoh's horrible rule was that those women had to kill the boy babies as soon as they were born. Seriously, he made a rule that babies had to be killed. Can you think of a more awful, evil rule? Well, guess what? The women who delivered the babies knew that God's people were special and that their God was real. So the women would not follow this rule. They kept right on helping those boy babies, and God was very pleased with them.
Stop laughing at that.
But the Pharaoh was angry, and he was determined to kill the boy babies so that they couldn't grow up and be strong enough to fight him. He told all the people of Egypt who weren't God's people that if they saw a boy baby from one of God's people, they had to take the baby and throw it in the big river to die. It was a hard time to be one of God's people, so sometimes they cried out to God, but they trusted God and knew He would protect them. They knew the stories of how He had always helped Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. One of God's people, a woman named Jochebed, knew all these stories too. When she gave birth to a baby boy, she also knew the king's rule that her baby would have to be thrown in the river to drown if he was found. So she hid him for as long as she could. One day, Jochebed was near a shallow part of the river when she saw some Egyptian women not far away. She put her baby in a basket and placed the basket in some weeds on the edge of the water. Then she ran away, praying God would protect her son. The baby had a big sister named Miriam, who stayed to see what would happen. Sure enough, it wasn't long until one of the Egyptian women heard the baby cry and saw him in the basket. Looking at him, she could tell he was one of the babies from God's people. She knew the rule, but she felt love for the baby, so she did not throw him in the water as she was supposed to do. Instead, the Egyptian woman began right then to treat the baby as her son. She asked Miriam, who she didn't know was his big sister, to find someone to take care of the baby until he was big enough to come live with her. The Egyptian woman didn't know, though, that the woman who got to take care of him a little longer was his very own mother, Jochebed. When he wasn't a baby anymore, he went to live with the Egyptian woman who had pulled him out of the river. The woman named him Moses, and Moses had an extraordinary adoptive mother because she was the daughter of the king. That's right, the same king, the same Pharaoh who made a rule to kill boy babies from God's people ended up having a little boy from God's people living in his house, being raised by his daughter, and he didn't even know it. But God did. He had protected Moses, and he had amazing plans for that little boy. It didn't matter that the king had wanted to destroy him. No one can stop God's plans. Even if his people started out in a basket in the weeds with the king against them, God will always protect them. This story is from Exodus 1 and 2. Now I'm going to ask you all some questions. What was the first bad thing that Pharaoh did to God's people? What was the second horrible rule that Pharaoh made about God's people? What did the baby's mom put him in, and how do you think she felt? Who found him and became his adoptive mom? All right, guys, that's our story for the day. I hope you learned about Moses and that you were interested and excited. I can't wait to share what happens next with you tomorrow. Now at this time, I'm going to end this live, and then I'm going to go live for the adults. So hop off this one and click on our next one. All right, go out and be bold.